Hello and welcome everybody to today's attributed session to you, brought to you by us here at Dream Data. My name is Stefan, and I'm one of the co-founders of Dream Data. And today I'm super excited to welcome Joe Glover here. We're going to talk about something that might feel a bit almost counterintuitive in 26, with AI now being everywhere around us, marketers and content is being written by AI. It's scoring our accounts, it's personalizing our outreach, it's filling our inboxes with spam and so forth. But this all these things are happening at the same time as we're probably one of the oldest playbooks in the B2B marketing book still works phenomenally, which is getting people actually to show up physically somewhere. And someone who's like a super duper specialist at doing this is Joe Glover, which I have with me here today. He's the founder of the Marketing Meetup, which is a community now that has more than 50,000 marketing members. And that's just like I was just saying before we went live, think about this as a football stadium just filled with 50,000 marketers. That's an amazing number. So me and Joe is gonna talk about like why in-person events are still important, or maybe even more important with AI, and how the trust you build face to face is different than what you do online. And then we are kind of also gonna touch upon how advocacy builds a lot stronger when you have physical relations to people as opposed to just having chatted a bit with people online. So that's the long intro, Joe. I'm super happy to have you here. And for those who never heard about you or your meetup, can you just explain a few like lines on like what you do and where this meetup has come from?
Of course, no problem at all. Well, first off, thank you for having me. And if we just end up speaking about football stadiums and football this entire chat, then we're having a nice time. But I started the Marketing Meetup 10 years ago this year, and I started it because I am quite a quiet person. I have a very quiet voice and quite introverted. And so when I went to networking events and would walk into those spaces and people would ask me what my job title was or what my budget was, or treat me as those two things, rather than sort of the human being I am, I just felt a bit sad. So 10 years ago, I started an event in a canteen in Cambridge. It had two speakers, a buffet, and the instruction to be positively lovely, which comes about as a general signal that folks come into the space to be kind and to be welcoming. A long story short, over these past 10 years, and it is a very long story now, the Marketing Meetup is now going to 250 events on 6 continents, with about 211,000 social media followers, 50,000 marketers in the community, and those two words, positively lovely, just remaining so at the core of everything we do. We're blessed beyond belief to have this community come together and look after each other. And so it's a special place to be, and it's a welcoming place to be. And I'm very grateful to be a part of it still.
Positively lovely. What does that mean, Joe? Or where did it come from?
So, well, this is actually prescient for the conversation that we're having to a certain extent. So I stood at one of the rooms introducing the event at the Marketing Meetup in Cambridge, very early days, I'd say about 6 months into the event. And I was trying to capture a way, which is like, I just said, just look after each other. And for whatever reason, I put those 3 words, instead of saying just look after each other, I said, well, just be positively lovely. And the interesting thing that happened in the room on the night was like, there was just like a very British ripple of laughter, which is sort of like one of these things which is sort of like under people's breath, but you kind of like, you sort of feel it. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting that someone's reacted to that. And I know that positively lovely is like 110%, it's very twee, but there was a reaction in the room. And so I said it at the next event, and it still got the same reaction. So I said it again and again and again. And eventually that became the 2 words that define the community. So when you ask what it means about showing up. We're inclusive, we're welcoming, we're grounded. I don't think being lovely is like being optimistic for the sake of being optimistic. It's about understanding the reality of the situation, and it's about caring about the person in front of you. So that's 2 words that we used to surmise the community, and we're glad for it because folks come in and they come in with the right vibe and create something quite special.
That's super nice.
Yeah.
Besides like nailing that kind of the cultural sentence there, what like if you take us back, kind of how did this community start, and why did you start it, and like what did you get right in the first couple of events since it spun into this whole big thing?
Yeah. Well, you started a runners club, right, in Oslo.
I
So
did. How did you know that? Oh, do you check my LinkedIn?
yeah, it's on your LinkedIn.
Funny, that's a long time ago.
So, but you know how these things begin to a certain extent, right? You know, you sort of, you have an itch that you want to scratch, and so you do a thing. And so in my case, it was like, okay, I'm just going to run an event. I was 24 years old, didn't know anything about events, didn't know anything about marketing, but I was like, you know, let's just do it. And then you run a second event and a third event, and you just kind of keep on going. And so that's been my journey over the past 10 years, is like a series of organic steps that when I ran my fourth event, whatever it might be, someone approached me and said, can I do this a little bit closer to my house? And 24-year-old Joe said, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. And so that continued. When COVID hit partway through, so I went full-time on the Marketing Meetup in April 2019. I had 110 events planned for that time. And then COVID happened and I had to cancel all of those. And we bought everything online. And again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just messaged Mark Ritson and Rory Sutherland and folks like that and said, would you do a webinar with us? And they went, yeah. And then I was like, okay, cool. You know, we'll do webinars. And that's how the community went from 10,000 people to 50,000 people. It's only really in the past year, now the team is 5 of us with 90 organizers around the world, that we've actually started to write down North Stars and strategies and stuff like that. But it's been a series of organic steps, which has been driven by those 2 words, and those 2 words in a very strong sense of helping the people that we want to help. So I'm not sure if that directly answers your question.
That's a good start. It's a good start. I'd love to learn how it happens, but I think this is like a classical entrepreneurial story as well. Like you don't have to have everything thought out. Like the
Yes.
same with like I thought when we started Dreamed It as well. It's like we're just 3 guys, but at least if we try this out, I'm sure I'm gonna learn a ton, no matter whether it works or doesn't work. But it's like just take the first step and then see what happens from there. I think that is kind of a very good tangible advice. It's funny, like anecdote when you just mentioned this, like Oslo running club, which is I had just moved to Oslo and I didn't know any locals, so I just thought I wanted to like. It was back when meetup.com was still a thing. I don't know if it is today or not, but that was quite effective back then.
Yeah.
I just created like I needed to go running anyway, so let's just try and see if anybody other wants to join for a run, and then.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that. We've got the same story. The only difference is that became my full-time job.
Yes, it's quite fantastic. Before we kind of go into more like the let's say like why this is good for business and all that kind of thing, can you just tell a little bit more about how it's structured or how it's run? Do members pay a subscription? Can anyone set up a local chapter? Like what are the kind of blocks under your umbrella?
Of course. So when it comes to events, there's three main things that we speak about. So the first is our webinar program. Those are free to attend events. Those are historically have been with folks like your Ritsons, your Sutherlands, your April Dunfords, the marketing superstars of the world, as well as marketing practitioners. Those are free to attend. They happen weekly. We get about 1,000 to 1,500 people a week sort of sign up for those sessions, which is fabulous.
And that's that in B2B, that is a very solid number.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really lovely. The second thing that we speak about is our in-person events. So to your question, then folks can set those up wherever they are in the world. And so with our experience and with the community now, we have a playbook on how to run meetup events, which is really lovely. We call it the book. And of course, it's now searchable with ChatGPT and stuff like that. But we have a playbook and a reasonable amount of confidence that we can help people fast track folks turning up to those events as well. Those are ticketed, but they're donation tickets, so people pay what they'd like to pay to come along to those.
Donation tickets, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really interesting to explore the cultural variations as well. So in Tokyo, for example, where we ran some of our events, donations don't work as well as they do in the UK because people actually just prefer a specific number, which was really interesting for us to learn. And then the third way our events run is we hold an annual conference. That's 400 people in Westminster in the UK. And so we just had that in March, and it's fabulous. It's a single track event, like folks coming together, just like the most lovely day, surrounded by brilliant people and brilliant speakers. So webinars, in-person events, which are very community driven, and then the conference in the middle of it all.
Super nice. And what do people get out of this? Like what do they get out of the webinars? What do they particularly get out of these like physical meetups?
Yeah, so we categorize
like spending all this time on it.
We categorize it in a couple of different ways. So with the webinars, we spend a lot of time speaking about education. So we speak about, with the Marketing Meetup, we speak about connection, competence, and confidence. And so with the webinar program, then we speak about competence primarily. We're there to educate folks. We're here to say this is how to do a specific thing, so that they can be in their office space and learn how to do a thing. At the in-person events, the thing that folks get the most out of it is the connection element. So that's sort of those moments of serendipity, those conversations, and sort of walking into those spaces and meeting someone new, creating their network. And roughly speaking, our equation is if you're feeling more competent and you're feeling more connected, then you'll probably feel more confident too. And when we speak about the marketing industry as a whole, marketing is a really interesting profession because compared to some of our contemporaries in our workforce, an accountant doesn't necessarily have to justify their existence on a daily basis. As a marketer, we have to spend the time and say, you know, our work created this effort. And when that goes well, that's great. But when it doesn't go well, then that's a real confidence moment that could really damage us. So if we're able to provide connection for folks and competence, and they're able to walk away with confidence, then I think we're doing a good thing.
That's a good start. Yeah, it's interesting with these like personal meetups. It's like I feel like also the advice that I can implement the fastest are definitely advice I pick up like one-to-one, where somebody explains me, I did this thing on LinkedIn and it worked great. Then I know I can just rush straight home and implement it, as if I'm just kind of laming through the LinkedIn feed and somebody says the same thing to me, it doesn't stick in my brain the same way.
Really? How have you found that? Because, so for example, 2 weeks ago, I ran a workshop internally with my team, and I was teaching them how I use Claude every day, and I'm really deep into Claude code, and you know, it's all set up and it's all working great, stuff like that. But there was a real variance in the team in terms of skill levels and exposure to the AI landscape. And the thing that was the real unlock for the training of the team for me was going through specific workflows and specific problems that we could face. In this case, it was email. And so that was the moment where they all went, aha, I get it, you know, and sort of went off and did it. How have you found sort of getting AI adoption across the team? Because you've got a far larger team than I do, which is really quite tricky.
Yeah. Good question, Joe. I think I kind of fundamentally, I believe that this, like, I've been working for now, because I've finished my studies in 2010. So makes up 15 years, 16 years by now. And I think this is probably the biggest wave of change that I've seen. But I have seen like also like we had mobile phones, suddenly we had social media in terms like of the marketing world, and those were enormous changes. But this AI thing feels like probably the most powerful thing that I've seen, and that kind of opens up an enormous potential for those who gets in the forefront of it, and kind of I like it, like leading the leading the line instead of kind of being late to the adoption.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to tell my team to please do use AI. And sometimes maybe I say too much that it turns over to this thing that just use AI for the AI's sake. But what I really mean is that this is an opportunity to increase both quality and quantity at the same time. At least that's what I'm hoping that will happen from them getting more and more into AI. But I think fundamentally the thing that we do that helps the most is that we organize a monthly session where everybody demos something that they've done with AI in the last month. And it's not about slides, but it's actually sharing your screen, clicking on the specific button, showing where on the screen is this thing you need to use.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, a lot of cross-pollination happens where it's like, because we're in the same marketing team, they're very related, the tasks that people do, and it can be a very good eye opener, or just kind of a missing piece for somebody else seeing how somebody demos how to use AI.
For sure. You know, and I appreciate taking this off in a slightly tangential direction, but isn't exactly, you know, to bring it back to where we are, isn't that the wonder of all these sort of connections? Like, yes, you can read on LinkedIn or a blog post, you can do X, Y, Z, but until you have that moment of realization when you're sat next to someone and they say, here's this thing I did and let me show you how, and then it clicks for you, you know, there's a magic human connection, even in a topic which is so ridden in the digital world. So you know, that power of humanity and sharing and communicating is something we do so well.
Yeah. So what do you think like AI is doing to us as marketers? And you can maybe you can go down both routes, like the positive route, and then you can take the negative route as well, or both.
Yeah. I mean, everything about this conversation is both. Totally about. So let's take the largest step back that we possibly can. When I started marketing, people were still speaking about digital marketing as if it was a thing. And then there was a slow realization in the industry that digital marketing is just marketing. And I think we'll do the same with AI to a certain extent, in the sense that, like, every company at the moment is doing their best to own AI as hard as they can and put it on their homepages, etc., etc. But in 10, 15 years, the way that we speak about AI, it'll be as unusual to sort of describe ourselves as an internet company as it will be an AI company. You know, that's just how it will be. So taking a step back, we doing to us as marketers, well, at the moment, we're jumping on a bandwagon, rightly, I would suggest, because I think you need to do what you need to do to stay practical. But we're focusing on the tool more than we are necessarily what it is serving. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is undoubtedly for those people who are probably early adopters, and I would point out that these are early adopters rather than necessarily the population as a whole, because I think we forget as we speak about these sort of industry narratives that there are a lot of people who aren't even using AI day to day. But certainly there's sort of like top 5 to 10% of people using AI are seeing real efficiency gains. Where they're probably seeing the most efficiency gains is not necessarily in huge revolutions in changing what they do, but iterating and becoming more efficient on what they already did. So as an example, I'm much faster on replying to my emails now because of AI, but I haven't found a new system to replace email. So I think that's probably true. The trade-off of that is, though, I don't feel like I have less work, and I think that was part of the promise of AI. And I feel like I'm tasking AI to do a lot more things, but certainly I don't feel like I have less work. So I think that part of the promise is currently under delivering.
I hate when I find myself having spent so much time prompting a text rather than if I had just written it out, I would have already done by now. It's very frustrating.
It's so true.
What do you think, Lynn, if I ask specifically about how kind of what is AI doing to social media and content where most of us are being confronted with AI productions nowadays?
Well, to share a personal experience of that, I'm just becoming very grumpy, and I think it's becoming a shame. And the reason why I think it's becoming a shame is like there are these wonderful platforms with fabulous opportunities for human connection, and they are being flooded with AI, whether that's in the comments section or whether that's in the text. And for me, that's the prime use case for us as marketers of where we should not be using AI, because it's not good enough and it's not personalized enough, and it is an average. And a million people have said that it's average, but it is average content. None of this stuff is helping anyone. In fact, it's damaging ecosystems, which could actually be really useful, flooding it with stuff which makes it basically unusable. So it's making me sad. It's making me feel like people are misusing it. It feels like it's making me question every bit of copy that I read, and it's making me quite cynical. And all those things are feelings which I have to fight every day, because I'd like to be a positive person and I'd like to sort of find the best out of these platforms.
That's a fantastic example of how everything is both positive and negative about this scenario.
Totally.
I think in general, I think hopefully the lowest like I think the average of if you want to be successful with content, then means that the average is going up, because at least everybody gets to what used to be the average level.
Yeah.
But now the average level is just the low level again. So if you want to stand out, you need to do like really superior copywriting to seem relevant.
And I think that is prescient for B2B specifically. And the reason why I say that is that even if you're working in a large enterprise company with B2B segments as your primary segment, you don't need thousands and thousands and thousands of new clients every year. You need to build something which is substantive and reasoned and careful and thoughtful, and build that into every stage of the process as much as you can. And that isn't to say that you don't use AI, but in terms of consistent, huge mass scale automation of every step along the way, I don't feel like we need to be doing that. It needs to be both. It needs to take everything good from AI in terms of automation, in terms of discovery, etc., etc. But in order to stand out in that landscape, you're going to have to be extraordinary, and but do so with the awareness that you can probably hit your sales targets more easily if you're not sort of automating everything away and you're just pressing go at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
That's how these things work.
I think everything is also getting super polished because everybody runs it through these averaging out machines. So like having a spelling mistake in your post nowadays is probably not that bad, because it shows that you actually probably were writing this yourself.
I agree.
Or some of the content that I post on LinkedIn that do really well is if I take a specific screenshot, which like everybody can see, this is your inbox, and this is a screenshot you've pulled from your inbox.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree. It's sharing the experience, right? You know.
And then like if we can, then we should probably plug this back into the why physical communities, because for me this says something about that we as humans, we do like to follow authentic, real human beings more than something that is super duper polished by a machine.
Absolutely. Well, there's levels that this works, right? You know, the first is there is a nuance in human connection. There's no way you and I would have ended up speaking about football stadiums in 2 minutes of a scripted AI conversation. We wouldn't have spoken about kids or et cetera, but that stuff matters. But the second thing that is also true is when you become cynical about written content on these digital platforms, then when someone looks in front of you and looks you in the eye and has a conversation, then you know it's real too. And when we place this into a B2B context, the job that I had as a marketing manager before the Marketing Meetup was at an agency. And I remember being really frustrated with my boss. And I was really frustrated with my boss because he was always the person who brought in the clients. And it was me as the marketing manager trying to sort of bring in clients. And I was writing blog posts and I was doing the website and I was doing social media and stuff like that. But eventually he was the person that was closing at the end. And the reason why he was closing at the end is that by the time someone came in to speak to us at the agency, then they'd already read the blog post, they'd already been the social media stuff, but then they had that personal relationship with my boss. So they felt like a mate by the time they sort of came into the company and started working with us as an agency. And I know that you do those stats of like 272 days as an average lead time of a sales thing before someone comes in. And there's so many touch points which aren't seen as part of that sales process beforehand. And I would say that the value of human connection, particularly in those unseen moments, are going to be where folks get the real value. And then, of course, they get brought into a sales process later on. But I think both you and I are advocates for thinking about that wider sales cycle. Both you and I are advocates for having an awareness that stuff exists, which you actually do a fantastic job of measuring, but historically hasn't been easy to measure. But I would say that the real powerful stuff sort of sits in those sort of face-to-face and human interactions that sort of really moves things forwards.
If we then, so like obviously you've been extremely successful building your marketing meetup, but is there some sort of recipe that we can kind of try to articulate here, that if you are a B2B company, how can you kind of learn from Joe's success at like running a meetup to kind of to make it become like a valuable playbook for a B2B company as well? Like how do you do that diagnosis of your own company that this might be something you should consider?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would do is you have an underlying principle, which is you have to care. And I know that is like the most basic thing, but like you have to care about the people you're serving. And we should have that as a default in marketers, but I think a lot of the conversations that we have as marketers start with how can we get the most out of this conversation, rather than how can I care about the person in front of me and create something which is cool. So like you need that as a foundational principle, because otherwise it's a sales channel, not a community. And it's fine to have a sales channel, but if you want to create a community, then you need to care. The second thing, and you did this with how you described the running club, is you had an awareness of a pain point. And I think quite often for us, when we're speaking about community, it has to be a superhuman thing. So for you, it was like, I'm just in a new area where I want to meet people and I'm going to go running anyway. For me, it was, I want to learn about marketing and I'm a bit shy. And so like we had a reason to be for this thing. And so like, don't say, I'd like to start a community. Begin the sentence with, I'm new in an area and I'd like to meet some fellow runners, or I'm shy and I'd like to start a marketing event. And that gives a foundation for everything that comes, because you have a story. The third thing which I'd encourage is having a story to tell. So again, you did this wonderfully when you were speaking about it. You were like, yeah, I was new to an area, so I just started doing this thing. And I'm sure you've articulated that in lots of different ways, but ultimately, you started bringing people together around that story. I did the same with the Marketing Meetup. I tell that story all the time. And the reason why I tell that story all the time is it leads into the last tip, which is values. Values all the way. And so for us, we speak about listening, saying hello, and being positively lovely. Those things wouldn't make sense if they didn't have the grounding of the story. They didn't have the grounding of the reason for being, and they didn't have the grounding of genuinely caring about the people in front of us. So for me, I think articulating not only why we're doing this, but how we do this suddenly becomes a really powerful thing. Now, the reason why I speak about these things rather than sort of marketing tactics is 6 years ago, I had to cancel every single one of my in-person events and move them to webinars. I could have had the mistake of thinking I was an events community. Actually, what I was a community first that happened to do events, that happened to do webinars. And so I think once you have a story and a set of values and a reason for being, then it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how you show up. But you need those components to be able to show up consistently in the same shape and have people understand why you're doing it. So for any B2B company out there, don't just start a community. Don't just start bringing events together. Make sure you've got all those things set first. And then you can build something with soul, something which people resonate with. And ultimately, I speak about the currency of community being opportunity. And there will be opportunities that come off the back of it, whether it's sales, whether it's new contacts, whether it's people being each other's bridesmaids, as they have been at the marketing meetup and stuff like that. But the magic of this stuff is incredible.
And there's this serendipitous element, or like meaningful accidents, as you call them, Joe, that is that's completely unpredictable in these physical meets between people.
Isn't that the joy of life? I mean, like, I've benefited from it commercially. I've benefited from it as a human being, and these are the joy of in-person events that you'll never capture elsewhere.
Yeah. I guess there's probably three things I would like to kind of touch. Like, one is kind of, how do you then actually get people to show up to your event? Like, then secondly, what is a good meetup? And then thirdly, kind of like, how do you get the math to work with your community or your event? But if you start, like, so you said like the story is very important, and let's just imagine that we have that story. How do you then actually start getting people to show up at your events?
Yeah, I love that. So it's funny you mentioned meetup.com, because that's exactly where we placed our first event too. And so I definitely encourage folks to use platforms where people are, and get in touch with communities where people are too. And the reality is, at the beginning, then that momentum is built off the back of other people's stuff or a really massive advertising effort. But I'd suggest the easier thing to do out of the two is number one, unless you make a budget.
Makes sense. Yeah.
The one watch out I would give to that is clarity. It's clarity of communication of, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is how we're going to do it. And so if you've got 3 sentences, a description, or 3 paragraphs, a description of what it is, a description of what you will do, and a description of how you're going to do it, then I think you're probably onto a winner in terms of a format. It seems simple, but it's the type of thing that if you don't think about it, is easy to miss.
Is there something about, like, the authenticity can be a little bit harder to reach when you're like a business who go at it with a for-profit kind of attitude, as opposed to you started with like a for-learning attitude?
I personally don't think so. I think you have to do one layer of getting past that. I do agree, which wouldn't exist if it was a purely organic thing. But I think people are happy to engage with brands if it does feel authentic, and it does feel like you're speaking to them rather than at them. And I think this is a really important distinction that a lot of people miss. They will create an event title that is, like the worst of AI, as if the worst of AI has written it. They will create a description which doesn't give clarity to why they're coming. And I think the reason for this, more often than not, is someone is targeted on X amount of bodies in the room, of a certain ICP, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that is wrong, but I think what it does is it misleads people into a certain set of actions, which, if they took the same actions, they'd actually have more success, or different actions that have more success getting the same ICP folks in the room. And so rather than using language like, in today's AI-driven world, it can be language like, this is a space for CMOs who are struggling to keep up on AI, just like me. There's a profoundly different language there. It's the same event, but it's a very different spirit. I don't think there is a huge disadvantage to being behind a brand. I flew halfway across the world last week to go to the Adobe Summit because I wanted to find out stuff about what's going on there. It was compelling. There was a reason to be there. I think the thing that we need to do is be clear on what people are going to gain, and you can do that in a corporate context or a personal context from my mind.
Yeah, that's probably a good segue to talk about what's a good event and what's not a good event. Like if we were to host an event as a company, and all we would do to you is to say, like, come book a sales call with us or book a demo with us, and this is all our features, and they do these things. That'd be a very different experience than somebody who's like invited a smart speaker, served you food, made sure you networked and met different kinds of people. So like, yeah, that really says something about what type of content should you probably think about having at an event. But you're the expert, Joe. Kind of, how does a good event look like in the marketing meetup world?
I think it starts with intention. I think you have to know what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. So for the marketing meetup, we're quite clear. We want to connect people, we want to educate people, and that's where our mission starts and stops. And so there's no pressure around the sort of target space stuff, which is great. If your target is something else, then your intention is something else, and your framing of the event is something else, and that is okay. I think it's okay to acknowledge this is a sales event, but just be clear about what that is up front, so that when folks come in the room, they're not disappointed. And so I would probably say, what makes a good event? There are so many different ways to answer that, but probably key to it is the match between expectation and what actually happens in the room. And if you're doing those things, then you're probably all right. To take that one step further, like the other day I attended the B2Believe event with LinkedIn. I know that you're represented on stage at the event, and I thought your content was fantastic. I thought the LinkedIn content was fantastic. I then asked Mimi Turner, who's a LinkedIn person, to come and speak at our conference. Her presentation was branded in LinkedIn stuff throughout the entire time. But it was fabulous, and it was generous, and it was giving, and it gave such a good impression. And so I think this is more an answer to your previous question than to this one specifically, but I don't think we need to shy away from putting our brands on things, but I do think we can be generous and we can be clear with the intention, so that when folks walk in and walk out, they know what they're getting and what they've got.
Yeah, and I think whether you say buy our product or whether you actually have a genuinely good time there as an audience, at the end of the day, you should be focused on like just getting people to spend more time with your brand, because that will, whenever they're in a situation where they need something like what you solve for, you would probably be on the list of companies that they will come and speak with.
That's the John Doerr 5% people in market any one time, 95% out of market. That's I think if you go in with as an event organizer, I would say to myself, am I trying to get the 5% or am I trying to get the 95%? And that would wildly shape the format of the event, who I try to get along, who I invite, the communication around it, the values which I display at the event, etc., etc. It all comes down to intention. So knowing, end of the day, like a funnel, where I'm placing that event will make a big difference for sure.
Yeah. Are there any specific things you do at your meetups? I don't know if the marketing meetup comes with like a McDonald's type playbook that you have to do this, then you have to do this, and then this. Like, are there any kind of like gold nuggets in there you'd think, or you'd mind sharing?
There are. So we call them our magic moments.
Yeah.
So we've got 10 magic moments associated.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're associated with every in-person event. And the reason why we had to do that was that we started as just me, and now we've got a core team of 5 of us who sit in the middle, and then we've got these sort of 90 organizers around the world.
Yeah.
And we live and breathe this every day, but our organizers are volunteers. They're folks who have said they'd like to bring TMM close to them. And so we need to be fair to them, and we need to convey the minimum amount of information in the most clear way that we possibly can. So what we said is, these are 10 things that if you get right, then you've run a marketing meetup event and you are the most fabulous human being on planet Earth. And so they start before the event. We break it up into 4 phases. We've got pre-event, we've got at the beginning event, during the event, and after the event. Pre-event, it's making sure that the speakers are briefed, the slides are received, and the venue is all in touch. It's very, very simple stuff, but like if you do it, it makes the event feel so much less stressful. Second thing, when you're at the event itself, signage is a wildly important thing. And then the first moment when someone walks into the room, you know that feeling when you walk into a space and you got someone sat behind a reception desk and they kind of go, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
Compare that to someone saying, "Welcome," with a huge smile and sort of like feeling like someone's expected in the space, almost like they're our guest, is a huge moment for the experience of the event. So what is that first sort of interaction? How can we make sure that that is wonderful, forms a magic moment? After that, how does the person go from the front desk to the networking space?
Yeah.
So for example, at our Birmingham event, they have to go through a couple of corridors. So our magic moment there is that there's always someone on the desk with the person signing in who's going to walk someone into the space. They're not going to be sort of said, "You just go that way." You walked into the space. Again, that feels like. And so it continues. When we speak about our values that are reaffirmed at every event, we give speaker coaching to our organizers so they can sort of feel confident that when they stand at the front of the room, they're able to convey the values. And then it continues right up until at the end of the event, where we just try to leave the space better than we found it. And then again, you know, all these things, they sort of feed up to Positively Lovely. But there's these sort of 10 magic moments that really make a TMM event feel special.
That's very cool. And I think, I think like people should do their own research about how to like organize a good event, because if you leave everything up to coincidences, then you're probably not setting yourself up for success.
No, you're beholden to the personality and the day.
I have a thing with like there should always be name tags, at least so it has like a name on somebody. So when you're speaking with them, you remember the name and you can start memorizing who those people were a little bit better.
Absolutely, you know, and I fully agree with you. And I think the thing that people can take away from this part of the conversation is that every event is going to have their things which are important for them. So don't copy mine, you know, find your 10 things. Or if you do copy mine, like put a spin on it that matches your values and your story and that your foundation that we've spoken about already. Like if you're trying to be Positively Lovely, you're probably doing the wrong thing because you're trying to be my brand, not your brand. You know, and so building out your own magic moments, I think, is a fabulous way to sort of do it for yourself or do it for your team.
Yeah. Joe, I know it's not the easiest thing to articulate, but if we were to talk a little bit about how do companies then secure budgets for these things, or what is the ROI math, or what is the explanation that they should be given to the like financial officers and the people that count money, etc. about how do we get that, like in this capitalistic environment, how do we get that equation like somewhere doable?
Yeah, I love that. So at the Marketing Meetup, we monetize through sponsorship, but we have different reasons for different things. And so again, we started as a community, and so our in-person events are the greatest example of community that we can bring together. And so we don't worry so much about making money on them. Our target with those events is, can we break even on every event that we run? And as long as we don't make a loss, then we know that things are fine, type of thing. So that's our target.
I think actually that's for many marketing activities, just can you prove you get to break even? That is a very decent way of doing things, because that is like today you broke even, but you're going to be harvesting value for these things for a long time. So I'm a big fan of that one.
Absolutely. I fully agree. No, you're so right, because you've done the event, right? You've brought 40, 50, 60, 80, 200 people into a space. yeah, you've gained something off the back of it. So I think that's really, really big. The second principle I probably point to when it comes to the CFO kind of conversation is that I'm consistently amazed at how regularly the CFO is positioned as the enemy of marketers. And
That's funny. But it is actually the opposite story of that is that this guy is responsible for that the money spends the company's money in the most efficient way. So he or she is just asking questions because he can be giving a budget to a new engineer,
absolutely.
buying an ad, buying a designer, buying a salesperson. So like it's just kind of trying to rationally understand why are we spending the money we're spending.
And it's exactly that, right? You know, those questions are not an attack. They're a line of questioning so you can understand and ultimately justify their position to a certain extent. And so with that thought, you know, they're not stupid. You know, they're not stupid. And you sort of sit down and have a conversation and say, look, we want to do this event for this reason, this reason, this reason, you know, 3 logical reasons. Our expectation is X ROI, you know, and that can be on whatever basis. And they'll follow along the conversation because they're not stupid people. You know, they're people who understand reason and rationale and logic in the same way as we do. And so taking them on that journey and sort of saying, this is the reason why we want to do something, rather than, I certainly don't want to characterize it as throwing our toys out the pram if we don't get what we want, but like, you know, being questioned is a good thing in a way, and sort of being able to justify those decisions again is a good thing.
That's also like another like what do you say, a principle of mine is that like good marketing is something you produce more revenue out of than what you spend.
Yeah.
So like kind of if a meetup has a certain cost, you should in some way be able to articulate why you produce more money than you spend on this event.
Yeah, and you know, I agree, and so after that point, it is about tracking, and it is about understanding attribution, and it is about loading the data into the system in a way which makes sense. But the only thing I would encourage is patience. And like this goes back to the 272-day figure in the B2B situation. I have way too many conversations, you know, because we are an organization which is funded through sponsorship, then we have a lot of conversations whose company's first interaction with us is that we need direct leads off the back of it. And we just have to hold our hands up and say, look, we know that we'll do a good job of building salience for the moment that folks are ready to be in market, but we're also doing the job for the other 95%. And so what we do is pass over as much as we can to make the 95% clear and the 5% clear. But what we're not saying is that our community are going to convert tomorrow, because that's not fair. It's not fair, and it's not right with anyone. So tracking those signals. And so like patience, I know it's hard in today's world, but like it's how humans work. You know, I'm not changing my CRM tomorrow. I'm not changing my CMS tomorrow, but I might do in 6-12 weeks. And if you've done that work, then I'm gonna know about it.
So if we take a step back, Joe, is there anything you feel like we haven't touched as of now that we should touch in this relation to why events and why communities in this very as digitalized world as we've ever been? Like, why should companies care about like organizing or orchestrating these physical meetups?
I think that last sentence is a really interesting one. I'm not actually here to be an advocate or not an advocate for running events. You know, I've seen the power of these things, and I've understood how they can work for my community, and subsequently a business model which has provided a community of marketers opportunities throughout the world. And so I've seen the power of those things, but I'm actually not here to convince anyone to do it. What I think you should do is have an intention behind your activity, and not run an event because everyone is running an event, but run an event because you know you want to do XYZ. And once you've decided what XYZ is, then going about these things in a way which makes sense and is compelling to people to want to attend. Like probably the check that I would do when it comes to having made the decision on XYZ is just do your best to sort of take a step back and relax a little bit, sort of step out of corporate mode as much as you possibly can, and sort of think, would I actually want to attend this event if I was sort of put in front of it? You know, if
Yeah.
and that's a very human question, but I think it's one that we probably start to organize our events with a marketer's hat on more than we do a running club hat on, or you know, an evening with friends sort of hat on. And that's our competition with that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Like, is this boring, or is this a fun night that we've organized? Is this relevant content, or is this irrelevant content for the people that are in the room? Like, these questions are like, should be asked.
And you know, I'm amazed how regularly they're not. So you know, it's one of those things, and that's not to criticize anyone, but it does it gives us an opportunity to really stand out. And
Joe, thank you so much for everything you shared, and I think our own selfishly our own events will get a little bit better from taking your advice. For those who are listening, is there a particular path that you want to send them on related to all your works?
Well, on a personal level, I spend way too much time on LinkedIn, so like you can find me there. Our newsletter is read by about 40,000 folks each week, so I'd encourage folks to get the newsletter, because then that's becomes the gateway to our webinars and our in-person events as well.
What's in the newsletters, Joe?
So we do 3 per week. Tuesday is about advertising that day's webinar. Thursday is useful stuff, including an AI prompt for the week, including quite often research from
AI prompt for the week. That's fun.
Yeah, stuff like tracksuit. We'll often provide brand surveys and stuff like that. And then Friday we curate some stuff around what we're just interested as a team that we have in the community. So it's good
fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time, Joe, and for giving me a throwback to when I lived in Oslo more than 10 years ago now. That's really cool. And yeah, for those of you guys who have been listening, like, if you disagree with Joe or do like what he's saying, then do ask your questions to him in the comments as you hear this episode. And like, if you like, we are trying to build a community as well of listeners or passionate B2B marketers. So do subscribe to our attributed show wherever you listen to podcast, and we'll be very happy about that. We are also trying to produce content that is just super duper relevant for B2B marketers, and it's not a channel we do to drive pipeline right now. So I do hope that you'll follow along. But Joe, thank you so much for spending the time with me and all the listeners, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.